3 weeks ago, my brother left me with a bank balance of $43.28. I didn't scream when I saw the empty account. I didn't cry. I opened a new spreadsheet. And I built a trap so perfect, he walked into it himself. So, let me start at the beginning. My name is Emma Reed. 3 weeks ago, the sound of my future evaporating wasn't a crash or a scream. It was the simple, sterile click of a mouse. I was logging into a shared dream, a high-yield savings account I meticulously managed for me and my brother. The page loaded. The balance wasn't a number. It was a void. $80,000. My life, my safety net, my promise to myself, gone. The withdrawal slips, digitally archived, bore his signature. A signature that had once signed birthday cards, college graduation congratulations, now signing away my foundation. The officer I spoke to later called it a civil dispute, a family matter. He suggested mediation. I hung up the phone and knew, with a cold, clear certainty, that it was not a dispute. It was a declaration of war. This is the story of how I balanced the ledger. My father was a poet trapped in an insurance salesman's body. He'd say things like, "Trust is the currency of family, M. It doesn't go in a bank, it lives in the vault of your shared name." He believed that, he died believing that. A sudden coronary on a Tuesday afternoon. No drama, just silence where he used to be. The grief was a quiet, suffocating fog. My brother Liam and I moved through our childhood home like ghosts, bumping into memories in the hallway. The inheritance was a shock, $80,000 each. It felt like blood money, a settlement for a loss with no price tag. Liam found me in Dad's study a month later, holding an old fountain pen. His eyes were red, but they had a new, desperate light in them. "We can't let it just sit there, Em. Dad's money. Inflation will eat it alive. We should be smart. We should pool it." He had a brochure for a duplex in a neighborhood on the rise. He talked about cash flow, equity, a joint future. The word together was his most powerful argument. In that fog, together was a lifeline. "You're the responsible one," he said, squeezing my shoulder. "The numbers person. You should be the custodian. You manage it, I'll handle the legwork, the contractors." Custodian. I clung to that title. It sounded like stewardship. Like I could still take care of something he left behind. Like I could be the keeper of the vault. So I built our fortress. I set up the joint account with complex passwords, automated transfers, a separate tax ID. I created a digital ledger more detailed than the bank's. Every hypothetical repair, every projected rental income was cataloged. For 6 months, it was a real thing. Liam would text me paint swatches. Slate gray or coastal fog, we'd argue good-naturedly over appliance brands over cheap Thai food. The dream had texture, color, a blueprint. Then, the texts became shorter. The color swatches stopped. "Market's cooling," he'd say, or "waiting for the right moment." I was buried in my final coursework for my forensic accounting certification, living in a world of debits, credits, and fraud patterns. I was learning to spot the lies in other people's numbers. I missed the silence growing in my own. The day it ended began like any other. I made coffee. I logged into the bank's portal, a Tuesday morning ritual. I clicked on the joint account. The screen refreshed. Balance, $43.28. I stared. I actually blinked hard as if my eyes were misprinting. I refreshed again. Same void. My training took over before my emotions could. Forensic accountant mode. Observe. Document. I opened the transaction history, and there it was, the massacre. It wasn't one large withdrawal. That would have triggered alerts, required extra authorization. This was surgical. Over 47 separate transactions, spanning 52 days, 3,000 here, 4,500 there, $9,999, always just under the $10,000 reporting threshold. A slow, deliberate bleed-out. Every one of them a transfer to an entity listed as Horizon Ventures LLC. The final transfer, for the last pathetic $43 and change, had cleared 3 days prior. He'd even swept up the digital dust. The drive to his apartment was conducted in a state of profound, eerie calm. My hands were steady on the wheel. I noted the weather, partly cloudy. I counted stoplights. I was building a mental file. He answered the door of his still-old apartment with a bottle of local IPA in hand. A football game babbled from the TV. Perfect timing. I've got big news. The normalcy was an act of violence. I stepped in but didn't move past the foyer. The air smelled of lemony cleaner and hops. Where's the money, Liam? His smile, it didn't break. It reconfigured. The brotherly warmth I knew melted and reshaped into something slick, patronizing, amused by my concern. Whoa, okay, straight to it. It's not gone, paranoid pants, it's working. The Pasadena deal, the commercial strip I told you about, it went off market. The seller needed a hard deposit, wired within 2 hours. I tried your cell like 6 times. You were in that cave of yours, the no-phone zone, you moved $80,000 of my money, I said, each word a block of ice without a text. An email, a signed authorization, a single word. He spread his hands, the picture of a reasonable man besieged by an hysteric. Emma, joint, account. Remember, either party may act. That's the legal phrase. That was the whole point of you being custodian, agility. You think fortunes are made by committee, by waiting for 3 forms of sign permission? This is how it's done. Not by staring at spreadsheets until you go cross-eyed. He extended the sweating glass of beer toward me, a peace offering. I let my hands stay at my sides. The air grew thick, soupy with the weight of his lie. Trust me, he said, trust me. I let those 2 words hang in the contaminated air. The most poisonous phrase in the human language when spoken by a liar who's already stolen the antidote. I shifted into interrogation mode. Clinical, precise. I need to see the purchase and sale agreement. The wire transfer confirmation from our bank to the title company's escrow account. The escrow number. The contact info for the listing agent. Now, a shutter slammed down behind his eyes. Instant, impenetrable. It's all with the lawyers, he said, waving a dismissive hand as if swatting a fly. Mergers and acquisitions paperwork, it's a tree killer. I'll have the whole stack for you next week. We'll go to that steakhouse, celebrate. There would be no stack. No steakhouse. I knew it then with a finality that felt like ice crystallizing in my veins. The vault hadn't just been robbed. My co-key holder had dismantled the lock, sold the hinges, and was now trying to sell me a story about upgrading the security. That night, my apartment was reborn as a war room. I printed every statement, every email he'd ever sent mentioning investment or property. I bought a corkboard. In the center, I pinned a photo of Liam from last Thanksgiving, grinning with a piece of pie on his fork. He became the sun in a sick solar system of red string and yellow sticky notes. My friend Chloe arrived, her laptop covered in anarchist cat stickers. She speaks binary and Python like native tongues, and her moral compass points unwaveringly toward her friends. This is not good, Em, she murmured, her fingers a blur on the keys. This is elegant theft. Look, she pointed at my timeline. 52 days, 47 transactions, never hitting the magic 10K it's structured to avoid automated flags. The money goes to Horizon Ventures LLC. She typed, scowled. It's a ghost, Delaware registration. A PO box that forwards to a virtual office in Panama. The money lands, churns for maybe 48 hours, and then gets kicked out to another numbered entity, and then it vanishes. It's a digital laundry cycle. Poof. He didn't buy property, I said. My voice sounded foreign, flat, metallic, the voice of the ledger itself. He gambled it. On a meme stock, on crypto, on blackjack. Or he gave it to a con artist with a slicker smile. Or I looked at his pie-filled grin on the board. He converted it, liquidated my cash into something hard, something he can hold. You have to go to the police. Today. I shook my head slowly, my eyes tracing the red strings from his face to the bank statements. No, the police offer justice. Which, in a case like this, means a court date in 18 months, a judgment against a man with no visible assets and a hollow feeling. I don't want justice, I want restoration, and then I want him to feel the hollow. I want him to walk into the exact geometric shape of the emptiness he sold me, every, single, echoing, cent. My first move was professional. I wore my best serious person blazer and visited Mr. Vance at the bank. His office was a tomb of mahogany and repressed anxiety. He steepled his fingers as I laid out the timeline. Miss Reed, my sincere condolences for your familial strife. But the transactions, however distressing, were from an account with full dual authority. You both signed. This is, strictly speaking, a civil matter between co-owners. I slid a single sheet of paper across the vast, polished desk. My own work. A comparative forensic document analysis. What if the signatures authorizing these specific transfer batches are forgeries? I pointed, my nail tapping the crucial point. Look at the terminal flourish on the capital L in Read. On my signature card, on my driver's license, it loops back upon itself. Here, on these 6 key transfer orders, it's a simple, slashing line. It's a different motor habit. It's statistically anomalous. He pulled a brass-handled magnifying glass from his drawer and peered. His expression shifted from polite regret to sharp, legal interest. This was a language he understood. This alters the complexion considerably, he said quietly. This moves the needle from dispute toward fraudulent representation. We would be obligated to file a suspicious activity report with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. Law enforcement would be notified. File it, I said. There was no room in my voice for anything but directive. He nodded, making a note. We will, but I must manage your expectations. The SAR starts a process. It is a slow, grinding process, and it is not a recovery mechanism. Can you trace where the money went after the shell company? He offered a thin, razor blade of a smile. That, my dear, is a voyage you must undertake yourself. The corporate veils, they are designed for opacity, but some unsanctioned advice? Look for leaks. New toys, sudden liquidity. Thieves, especially the amateur kind, are spectacularly bad at delayed gratification. They buy the watch first. I took his advice. I became a ghost in Liam's new, uncharted life. For a week, I sat in my unremarkable sedan outside a sleek downtown loft building, a far cry from his post-college walk-up. I watched. He emerged each morning. The transformation was subtler than I expected, more sinister. No gaudy chains, no loud logos. Just a wool overcoat that fell in a perfect, expensive line. Shoes so understated they whispered money. And the watch. A matte gray pilot's chronograph. It didn't shout. It murmured a secret into the sunlight. A leased Audi SUV, silver, completed the portrait of modest, curated success. The first rule of accounting, assets equal liabilities plus equity. Liam had acquired new, high-value assets. His liability was me, and his equity was a fiction built on my stolen capital. Armed with the bank's SAR reference number and my own expanding dossier, I went to the police. Detective Morris had the face of a man who'd absorbed too much human sorrow. It hung in pouches under his eyes. He skimmed my file without expression. So your brother, your only sibling, allegedly siphoned your joint inheritance and forged your signature. And you want us to scare him straight? I want you to do your job, I said, my voice level. The bank has filed a suspicious activity report citing probable fraud. Here is my independent analysis corroborating it. I want you to knock on his door. To make him stand in his doorway and look into the face of the state. To know, in that moment, that his actions are no longer a private family secret, that the system has him in its gaze. He studied me. He was looking for the cracks, the tears, the trembling lip, the rage. He found a cool, focused calculation. It unnerved him. And what will you be doing while we're knocking? My due diligence. 2 nights later, under a misting rain that turned the city into a shimmering crime scene photo, I watched from a service alley. The marked police car looked like an anachronism in front of the polished loft building. The door opened. A wedge of warm, buttery light and a burst of laughter spilled out, then was severed. I saw the officer speak. I saw the physical shockwave hit Liam, the blood draining from his face so completely it left him looking like a wax figure. The charming, relaxed posture crumpled into a stammering, gesticulating mess. His words were lost to the rain, but the shape of them was clear. The door closed. The sound was a definitive metallic thud that echoed in the wet alley like a vault ceiling. My phone erupted after midnight. Call after call. A frantic, buzzing insect on my kitchen table. I let it light up the dark room, his name flashing again and again. I waited until the silence between vibrations felt charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. On the 13th call, I answered. His voice was a compressed, hissed scream, frayed with panic and fury. What did you do? The police were here? At my door. My girlfriend is having a panic attack. They just had some follow-up questions about the forgeries, Liam, I said, my voice a study in calm. The ones on the transfer authorizations. It's interesting, you'd think a forger would do their homework. My signature has a distinct evolution. You used an older version. Silence. a vacuum on the line. I could hear his ragged, wet breathing, and then it came, a new voice. Stripped of all pretense, all brotherly affection. A voice of pure, corrosive venom, you vindictive bitch. You jealous, tight-assed, control-freak bitch. It was our money. Dad's money, you were just hoarding it. Letting it rot in your pathetic little spreadsheet while the world moved on. I used it. I made it work. Something you'd never have the guts to do. Where is it, Liam? The question was a surgical probe. Gone, the word was a hollow explosion. All of it, a sure thing, a medical tech startup, groundbreaking, it folded. Took everything. So you win, okay? You six the cops on your own flesh and blood. They'll investigate, they'll find a shell company and a trail leading to a bankrupt LLC. I have nothing, you hear me? Nothing. So congratulations, Emma, you're bankrupt and you're alone. I hope your righteousness keeps you warm at night. The line went dead with a final digital click. I felt nothing. No tears. No towering, shaking rage. Just a profound, glacial clarity. He was lying, and he was bad at it. The police find what's visible. What exists in the world of light, of records, of registered assets? I needed to find what he'd hidden in the shadows. The second rule of accounting, follow the debits. Every financial crime, no matter how clever, leaves a residue, a ghost image on the negative. You just have to know the chemical process to develop it. My due diligence became a silent, shadowed hunt. Chloe, now a fully committed co-conspirator, dove into the digital exhaust Liam left behind. She found cached browser history linking his laptop to searches for high-capacity fireproof, safe ratings, and private gold bullion sales discreet. She recovered deleted email confirmations for a weekend at a 5-star resort in Napa Valley. The date stamp was weeks after the supposed startup investment had supposedly evaporated. It wasn't a business trip. It was a victory lap. I took the physical reconnaissance. In a generic courier's uniform, I visited the Sentinel Secure Storage Facility on the industrial edge of town. With a clipboard and a story about a pending delivery for a Mr. Reed requiring signature confirmation, I got a bored, chatty clerk to verify it. Unit Beat 117. Rented 8 months ago, a full week before the first transfer from our account. Paid in advance for the year, in cash. Cash. The ultimate audit trail killer. One Friday, I followed him. He drove north out of the city in a borrowed convertible, a woman with sun-streaked hair in the passenger seat, not the girlfriend from the loft. I photographed them at a cliffside restaurant, her head thrown back in laughter, his arm possessively around her, the vast Pacific a brilliant blue backdrop. The watch was on his wrist. I used a long lens, capturing every detail. That photo became a key piece of evidence. Chloe and I descended into the niche world of high-end watch forums. We found it. A limited edition aviator's chronograph from a cult Swiss manufacturer. Only 200 pieces ever made. We cross-referenced serial number ranges. A discreet, hypothetical inquiry from Chloe's collector uncle to a reputable vintage dealer revealed that this specific watch was sold at a private, invitation-only auction in Zurich 5 weeks ago. 5 weeks after he claimed to have lost everything. He wasn't bankrupt. He was liquid. He had converted my anonymous, traceable cash into hard, anonymous, portable stores of value. He was living on credit, playing the part of the chastened, unlucky brother, waiting for the police investigation to stall and close. Then he'd quietly convert his shiny, metallic nest egg back into a new life, in a new city, with a new story. And I'd be the bitter sister who didn't understand business. I compiled it all into a second, more devastating dossier. I returned to Detective Morris. He sifted through the pages. His weariness was now mixed with a grudging respect and a deep professional wariness. This is exceptionally thorough, Miss Reed, impressive legwork, but it remains circumstantial. A nice watch isn't a crime. A storage unit, rented with cash, isn't evidence of stolen funds. I cannot get a judge to sign a warrant to open a safe based on a vacation photo and a hunch. What if you received an anonymous tip, I asked, my voice colored with just the right shade of naive curiosity, about stolen property, possibly including unregistered firearms being stored in that specific unit. Something that would compel an immediate welfare and safety check. He leaned back in his chair. It groaned in protest. His eyes, old and tired, locked onto mine. Miss Reed, I am going to advise you, strongly and officially, against any form of vigilante action. Do not go near that storage facility. Do not attempt any further contact with your brother. You are dancing very close to the line of interfering with an active investigation and possibly breaking a few laws yourself. I held his gaze, unblinking. I'm just doing my books, detective, balancing the ledger. I wouldn't dream of interfering. The waiting after that meeting was its own special kind of torture. 3 days of forced stillness where every minute felt like an hour. I refined the plan in my mind, walking legal and ethical tightropes until the path was the width of a single filament. I couldn't touch the safe. I couldn't confront Liam directly, but I needed to turn his hidden treasure into the walls of his own prison. Chloe found the crack we needed. He's not just holding gold, Em, she said one night, her face bathed in the blue glow of her monitors. Look at this. She had tunneled deeper into the darknet forums where cash gets converted to hard assets. There's a pattern. Liquidators use a handful of trusted brokers. I think I found his. A user called Midastouch. She showed me encrypted logs, their timestamps a perfect match for the draining of our account. If this was his broker, then the digital fingerprint of the sale existed somewhere. Serial numbers, certificates, they'd be in his email, encrypted but maybe, just maybe, not fully scrubbed. A dangerous, elegant idea began to form. We couldn't get the physical evidence, so we would create irrefutable digital evidence. We would fabricate a phantom buyer. It has to be a choice with no right answer, I whispered, the architecture of the trap becoming clear. A decision between two abysses. Chloe's grin was feral. I can build a Bitcoin wallet with a poison trigger. The funds appear real, but any attempt to move them without a secondary key, a key he will never have, automatically burns them. Sent to a cryptographic black hole. And the buyer, I asked. Even easier, she said. I can ghost a profile on the marketplace, build a history, make a deposit from an untraceable Tumblr account, make him seem volatile, impatient, the kind of man you don't stand up. The plan was perfect in its cruelty. It wouldn't just reclaim what was mine, it would use his own greed, his own panic, as the engine of his downfall. But then, the universe decided to test my nerve. 2 days later, as I was leaving my usual coffee shop, I saw him. Liam, across the street, leaning against the driver's side door of his Audi. He wasn't looking at his phone. He wasn't getting in. He was staring, fixedly, at the entrance to my apartment building. A jolt of pure adrenaline shot through me, cold and sharp. Had he seen me during my surveillance? Had the storage unit clerk, in a moment of gossip, mentioned a curious woman asking about Unit Beatwo 117? I ducked back into the cafe, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. Peering through the window, I watched him push off the car and start walking, not toward the shop, but down the block, in the exact direction of the alley where I parked my sedan. He's checking. The thought was a vice around my lungs. He's suspicious. I waited 10 agonizing minutes, then slipped out the back door, circling the entire block. My car sat undisturbed, but tucked under the windshield wiper was not a parking ticket. It was a plain white index card. On it, in Liam's familiar, looping handwriting, was a single sentence. I know you're digging. Let it go, M, for old time's sake. It wasn't a plea, it was a warning. A shot across the bow. The game had just escalated from a financial chess match to something with real physical stakes. The note changed everything. It meant he was active, paranoid, and watching. Our careful timeline shattered. We had to move now, before he decided to empty the storage unit and disappear into the ether with his converted fortune. The next night was moonless, the sky a blanket of low, oppressive cloud. The Sentinel secure storage facility was a grim geometry of shadows. Every sound was a potential threat. The skitter of a raccoon in the dumpster, the distant moan of a freight train, the too loud rustle of my own jacket. This was no longer a calculated audit. It was a break-in, humming with raw adrenaline and dread. Picking the lock was the easy part. The silence inside the unit was absolute, a thick, dust-choked quiet that pressed in on my eardrums. The safe sat in the center, a cold, gray monolith. It felt less like a container now and more like an altar to his betrayal. My hands trembled as I taped the envelope to the inside of the metal door. This was no longer just a trap. It was a direct provocation. I was painting a target on my own back. If he realized it was me before the police arrived, his reaction would be unpredictable. Violent. As I slid the door shut, Leaving it deliberately ajar by 2 inches, I heard a new sound. Tires on gravel, rolling slow and deliberate. Not the screeching arrival I'd anticipated. A car was idling at the far end of the facility's main lane, its headlights dark. It was too early. Chloe's signal hadn't come. My blood froze. Had he been tipped off? Was he already here, waiting in the dark? I pressed myself into the narrow gap between units, my back against the cold corrugated steel. The car didn't move. A minute bled into 2. Then, with a low crunch, it began to creep forward. A dark sedan, not his Audi. As it passed under a solitary security light 20 yards away, the glow briefly illuminated the silhouette of a single occupant. It wasn't Liam. The car continued its slow patrol, turned a corner at the end of the row, and vanished. Just security, a random, routine check. The breath I'd been holding escaped in a ragged, silent gasp. The close call had sharpened every sense to a razor's edge. The trap was set, but I was now acutely aware I was not the only predator in this concrete jungle. Chloe's text vibrated 5 minutes later. "He's moving. Just got a frantic call, pulling out of downtown now. ETA 9 mins. The final act was beginning. From my new hiding spot, I watched his arrival. The panic was visceral. The relief when he saw the safe untouched was a physical thing I could feel across the distance. Then came the discovery. The envelope. The faint blue light of his phone screen washed over his face as he read my words. What followed was not the immediate outburst I expected. It was worse. A profound, terrifying stillness. He didn't move. He just stood there, phone in one hand, my note in the other, staring into the dark mouth of the open safe. The paralysis of an animal realizing the floor of its cage has disappeared. When the sound came, it was not loud. It was raw, guttural, torn from a place deeper than anger. It was the sound of a man watching every escape route seal shut in front of him. He slammed a fist against the safe once. A dull, dead thud echoed in the night. Then he began to pace, a caged tiger, pulling at his hair, looking from his phone to the note to the ominous darkness beyond the door. He was weighing his hells, digital obliteration or a physical confrontation with a phantom. He made a choice. His thumbs flew over his phone screen, trying to move the Bitcoin. I stopped breathing. Chloe's program was designed to give false hope. A 60-second processing delay before declaring the transaction failed and the funds incinerated. I saw the exact moment that hope died. His shoulders sagged. He stared at the screen in disbelief. He tried again. Same result. The digital fortune was gone, sacrificed on the altar of a combination he did not have. Now truly desperate, he fumbled with the marketplace login. I could imagine the messages flashing on his screen. Buyer is online. Buyer is 5 miles away. Buyer is 1 mile away. He backed away from the safe as if it were radioactive. He peered out into the blackness, searching the shadows for the shape of the man he had invited. The psychological torment was complete. He was no longer a thief in control of his destiny. He was prey, waiting for the hunter whose arrival he had financed. He couldn't stay. He couldn't leave the safe. In a final, futile act, he tried to heave the heavy rolling door shut. It jammed on its track, groaning in protest, and stuck open a telling 4 inches. He gave up, sprinted back to his car, and fled into the night, leaving his fortune and his fate behind. The aftermath was a silence more deafening than any scream. For 24 hours, there was nothing. No call from Detective Morris, no news alerts. The silence was a new form of torture. Had he gone to the police first with some twisted story? Had our digital ghost been traced? It was Chloe who shattered the tension with a link. A local news brief. Police called to Sentinel Storage for a disturbance. 1 man apprehended at the scene after attempting to flee. Investigation ongoing, believed to be tied to an interstate fraud operation. They had him. They'd found him at the unit, likely in a final, desperate attempt to crack the safe or to confront the buyer who would never come. He had run and they had caught him. The safe, the cash rental, his panicked flight, it was all the probable cause they needed to finally blow that vault door wide open. I never asked what they found inside. I didn't need to know. The victory was never in the recovery of metal, but in the restoration of balance. The ledger, not the loot. At dawn, I walked along the deserted beach. The world was washed clean, painted in hues of rose gold and deep violet. The air was sharp with salt and something else. Possibility. The third and final rule of accounting: for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Every debit has a credit. The ledger must always balance. His loss was my restoration, not in currency, but in consequence, in the re-establishment of a moral equilibrium. I had not taken from him. I had merely presented him with the invoice for what he had already stolen, and I had given him the privilege of choosing his method of payment: a prison designed by a digital phantom or one constructed by the state. A choice meticulously, painstakingly drafted from the raw materials of his own crimes. I took the prepaid burner phone from my pocket, dialed the number I'd memorized. It rang twice. Detective Morris? It's Emma Reed. I couldn't sleep. I had a nightmare, a vivid one. I think you should check Liam's storage unit. Sentinel Secure Storage. Unit Beatwo 117. I have this terrible feeling you'll find what's left of my inheritance there. I think he might be there, too, trying to cut a deal with the wrong kind of people. Miss Reed. Where are you right now? At home, in my pajamas, trying to let it go. Will you just check? I'll send a car. Stay at your home. Do not move. I will, thank you. I ended the call. I held the flimsy piece of plastic and circuitry in my hand, feeling its negligible weight. Then I drew my arm back and threw it in a high, arcing spiral far out over the water. It hung for a moment against the brightening sky, then vanished into the dark, rolling sea with a tiny, insignificant plip, swallowed by the immense, impartial ocean. A small, serene smile touched my lips, there and gone like the morning mist. The vault was empty, the trust was ashes, but the ledger was finally, perfectly clean. Every column added up. Every entry was justified. The balance was 0. And in the world of numbers, 0 is not nothing. 0 is perfect, silent, absolute equilibrium.